Greetings, fellow Star Trek fans, and welcome to Captain's Yacht, a Star Trek podcast run by two inner city high school teachers evaluating the Star Trek universe through the lenses of history and literature. A little reminder before we beam aboard the Captain's Yacht: if you like what you see or have feedback for us, please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and we'd love to hear from you. So, let's beam aboard the Captain's Yacht and see what we're talking about today. The greatest thing about classic Star Trek, which is definitely where, if I may be so bold, new Trek, specifically the Kurtzman Trek, struggles, is Star Trek is always a future in which you want to live. It's a utopia. Anything you could ever want, depending on who you ask, money is or is not a thing. You work to improve yourself. Whatever you want to do, you get. But there is always some sort of undertone that I've always found fascinating. Star Trek's thesis is that from the perspective of the audience, things get worse before they get better. Case in point, the original series. It is established that the Third World War happens in 1996 with the eugenics wars in Khan. 30 years after the perspective of the audience in 1966. Well, then, eugenics war didn't happen, so they created a new mythos with Next Generation and the post-atomic horrors. Case in point, we're talking late 1980s, Reagan era brinksmanship, possible arm race stuff. That definitely plays a role. And then, a little closer to home, Deep Space Nine has its Bell riot scenario where basically our own institutions completely collapse, resulting in massive poverty, massive riots. The only thing they needed was a certain virus to be prophetic. With Deep
Yeah.
Space Nine, it's actually shocking to see how close they were to actually calling the future. So, with all that in mind, before we started recording, Mr. Beta, you we had talked about story structure, and being that your line of work is in storytelling and English language arts, I'm curious to hear your perspective on how they handled that if they were to tell humanity in a three-act structure.
Yeah, I think they did it. I think it's really interesting, the way they did this. And I didn't really pick up on the three act structure as much until we started talking about it. But the more we talk about it, the more apparent it seems, right? As you said, Act Three is definitely Star Trek. It is what we see, what we would want to live in, everything that our technology could possibly lead to, all at least all the positive aspects. Yeah, and then we move back to Act Two, and it's really bad. It's the lowest, darkest point for humanity. The post-atomic horror, we joked about the puffy jackets, but basically what's going on there is that those are soldiers who are somehow drug inundated to carry out the orders of their superiors. They have that little like pull tab thing that they pull and they put up to their nose and inhale some type of narcotic that makes them more effective killers, or they take it right before they die too. You can see that in the trial scene as well. It's honestly really pretty terrifying, a pretty terrifying vision, and I think it works really nicely with all of them except the exception of the Bell riots, because we don't see it. We get tiny little hints. We know who Khan is, but we don't necessarily have to see the eugenics war. We understand this post-atomic horror and that it was a really bad low point because of how the trial plays out, and how it's basically summary judgment and execution. So the Bell riots, we actually get to see a two-part episode, which is really good and really,
Oh yeah.
I think, brave and amazing for Trek. To completely go with like racial identity of Cisco and him needing to use his black racial identity to carry the work of Bell and to make sure history played out in such a way that we would overcome what the Bell riots represent. So, minus that tiny two-part episode actually showing us some of the bad, I really think the middle part works because we don't see too much of it. Because, like you said, the tone and the idea of Trek is supposed to be utopia. So we kind of have Act One, our own lives, not perfect, but enjoyable, and as enjoyable as it can be in 2020, maybe more enjoyable in 96. I don't know, honestly. In 96 we didn't know what the Star Wars prequels were going to be yet, so it was really a time worth living.
Well
anyways,
said.
so we have that mode of our life where things aren't perfect, but we're striving, right, to be that more perfect union. Are we? Anyways, then it gets really ugly, and then we reach a lot more of our full potential as humans. And I love that. I think that's an amazing structure. And you'd think that'd make a boring story, but it obviously doesn't, because there's so many episodes or moments from the third act that we get where humanity's kind of in this utopia. Just because we have all of our technological needs met does not mean that all conflict has been resolved. And that's basically what the show is about. This isn't just technological determinism where because you have the best technology, it shapes how you are. This is a lot more of, humanity still figuring it out just now on the galactic scale instead of the, Earth political scale.
This is Captain Kanaka speaking. On behalf of my esteemed colleague at Scholar Beta, we hope you've enjoyed this deluxe version of Captain's Yacht, a Star Trek podcast. This is a podcast done by two inner-city high school teachers learning how to make a podcast so we can teach those skills to our students in the fields of social studies and English language arts. If you like what you see and like to see more, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as both me, Captain Kanaka, and my colleague Scholar Beta are new to the podcasting realm and the video production realm, please give us any feedback you deem appropriate. We could definitely use it. So, with that said,